And today I am very excited to have on the show Miss Artemis Scantalides. Artemis is a strength coach, gym owner, and presenter of the I Am Not Afraid to Lift workshops. She writes extensively about training on her blog at ironbodybyartemis.com, including her training for the Iron Maiden Challenge, which is a pistol squat, one-arm press, and weighted pull-up with a 24-kilo kettlebell. This is a full episode, so without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Miss Artemis Scantalides. All right, we are on the line with the Iron Maiden herself, Artemis Scantalides. How are you doing today, Artemis?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Zach. I'm excited to be here.
All right, well, hey, very glad to have you. So your credentials run very deep, but before we get into all of the hardcore and fancy strength-oriented stuff, tell us how you started in athletics and in fitness in general.
Well, I started, I would say, as far as athletics, it started when I was 3.5, and I started to take ballet. And that was something that was a huge part of my childhood and all the way into my late 20s. I danced. And so have 23 years of classical ballet training. So it's something ever since I was a toddler, I was always moving and going to ballet classes. And as I got better at it, I was even as young as 10, even younger than that, like 9 years old, I was performing in the children's cast of the Nutcracker for the Boston Ballet. I did that for 4 years. I think I did 4 Nutcrackers and I had some other child roles in some of their other ballets. So things like that. So classical ballet was a huge part of my life, and movement was a huge part of my life, and has always been. So, and and that led into other things too. So, I have a younger brother he's a fourth degree black belt in Taekwondo, and my mom is also a black belt in Taekwondo, and they were the ones who, while I was dancing, were always encouraging me to get into martial arts. So when I was 27, I hung up my ballet shoes to start studying Kung Fu, and it was just time. It was just the evolution of that movement for me. It was, ballet was great. It was beautiful, but I'd done my time with it, and I was ready to move on to learn other things. And so I started studying Kung Fu and just immediately fell in love with it. And I think because it's there are a lot of forms, it's very form-based. I mean, there is a lot of fighting in it too. But I could really relate to it as a dancer in terms of learning the movements and perfecting the skill. And so I really liked it a lot. So that is kind of, as far as athletics, that's my athletic background. And how I got into lifting, that started in high school. And I would say the motivation for me to want to start lifting was Linda Hamilton in Terminator, because I wanted to have her arms. So I started lifting weights. And at the time, I was a sophomore. I was a sophomore in high school. So it was like 1990, I think. Whatever the summer was that Terminator 2 came out. And so Nautilus was really popular. So I joined the YMCA, and like Stairmasters were really popular too. So I would do the Stairmaster, and then I would get on the Nautilus machines, and I'd sit there trying to do like bicep curls with the Nautilus machine and like tricep extension. Thinking I was going to get her arms, that was definitely my motivation. And then it led into other aspects of lifting. So it's good that I broke away from Nautilus. I got away from that, but that was how I started. And she was my inspiration, and I think she was an inspiration for a lot of people. I think there are a lot of women out there who wanted those muscles, that those chiseled biceps and shoulders. So
sure. And certainly, in your capacity as a coach, when did you start the personal training side of things?
That was later on in life. So after I went on to college, to undergrad, thinking I majored in psychology. So my intent was actually to be a psychologist. And as I went through undergrad, I decided that, that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And another passion I had was foreign languages. So I minored in French. I studied Arabic as well. I almost double minored in both, but it was a lot, so I didn't double minor. And I know a couple other, I know I speak a little bit of Italian as well. And then I have some really basic Greek just from when I was growing up. I had to go to Greek school. My parents sent me to Greek school, all that. So I had that as a passion. So throughout college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I had decided psychology is not it. And so when I graduated, I thought, well, maybe I want to get into languages. So I did spend a number of years trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so when I first got out of college, it was just more about like I need to pay my rent. And I ended up getting a job as I was a contract specialist for the United States Mint. So I worked in procurement. And procurement, so I wrote contracts, administered contracts, and negotiated them for a long time. I did that for, gosh, I want to say, how old was I? I was 22 until I did it for 8 years. I did that for 8 years. And then I went on to, and it was just because it's something that I ended up being really good at and it pays pretty well. And it wasn't something that I was really passionate about or that I loved at all. While I was doing it, I did not enjoy working in an office. And while I was working as a contracts administrator and negotiator, and I didn't work for the U.S. Mint forever, I moved on to other positions. I worked for a large defense contractor. They're based out of Northern Virginia, and then I went on to work for like Metropolitan Life Insurance, and just working in procurement the whole time. And then it was in my last position, working as a contracts administrator, that I was always leaving to go and take spin classes and study kung fu and do everything, all these things that were related to fitness. Like that was what I was really passionate about. I could not wait to get out of the office and go and do that. And so finally I went and got my spin instructor certification, and I started teaching spin classes part-time. And when I started doing that, that was when I really realized, like, this is what I want to be doing full-time. Like, I don't want to be pushing around paper and working in an office full time. This is not what I want to be doing. So it took me, from the time I realized that, from the time I got my spin instructor certification, it took me about 5 years to finally get the courage to leave my office job. And not just the courage, but just prepare myself, get some money in the bank and get my certifications in order and do that. And by the time I had left, by the time I had moved on to working as an IT consultant, so I went from writing contracts to, as an IT consultant, doing software implementations with contract management systems. So I got to go on the other side and do business requirements analysis for businesses, for their contracts departments and other departments, and doing software implementation. So I was doing that at the time, but I knew that still wasn't it. And so finally I got everything together, and I was it was full time. I made the leap in 2008. So 7 years ago, I made the leap full time to work full time as a personal trainer and part-time and a group fitness instructor. But until then, I spent 5 years working part-time as in group fitness and just kind of building up my business that way, and just more and more validating, like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I need to be doing. I just have to, like, get the courage to make it happen. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I can imagine right around that time is when the kettlebell probably entered the picture. And how did that change your training personally and how you coach others?
It just changed everything. So I first learned about the kettlebell in 2000. Well, I knew about kettlebells, but I had never worked with them before until 2008 when I started to work full time as a coach. And I got my first kettlebell certification, which is it's not either Strong First or RKC. It's a different kettlebell certification, and I loved it. I loved the kettlebell. I totally fell in love with it, and I saw all the changes that my clients were having in terms of movement, in terms of strength gains, in terms of just body transformation. It was like no other tool that I had ever used with my clients. So, or even like just experience in a group fitness atmosphere. So, I was like, this is an amazing tool. And so, and then I also found for my own personal training, that was around the time that I was training for my black belt in Kung Fu. So I found that it helped me to stay healthy and strong and have that endurance that I needed for training with the kettlebell for my black belt test, which was a 3-hour test. So it was, after that, it was just, kettlebells, sometimes barbells are some people's first love, the barbell is, but kettlebells are my first love, and they will always be my first love. And then after I got my black belt in Kung Fu, that's when I moved on and I got my RKC certification, and that was in 2011. And that when I went to that certification, I will say that I was completely unprepared in terms of like, I thought I knew a lot about kettlebell training until I went to that cert. And then I was like, I know nothing. I know absolutely, absolutely nothing, which is good. Like, you definitely want to go into a cert and have that happen, because then you're like, okay, I have to like fill my cup again. I need to learn, like, because I know nothing. So, even though I was introduced to the kettlebell in 2008 and I started to use it, I would say that getting my RKC certification in 2011, that truly changed how I trained people, how I trained myself. It changed so many things in terms of just the principles of hardstyle training and just the philosophies that hardstyle kettlebell training uses, and it changed so much. When I came back from that certification, I had been teaching a kettlebell small group training at the gym I was working at, and I scared the crap out of everyone, out of all my clients in that class, because I came back from that certification. I told them to forget everything that I had taught them and that we were starting over.
Right.
They were like, "What?" But in a sense, we were, because I had a lot of cleanup to do in terms of technique and just different programming and different principles, like the breathing principle. I implemented the power breathing and really emphasizing barefoot training, and it was for a good reason. It was like I just needed to rip the Band-Aid off and get everyone into it, and most people bought into it, which was really cool. I think I had just like one person that was like, "Peace out, I'm not doing this anymore," and I was like, "That's fine," So it worked out, and I felt better about what I was teaching because I believed more in what I was teaching, what I had learned at that certification, to bring that back and to teach that than what I had been doing previously. So, I can't teach something I don't believe in.
Right.
Something I cannot do. So.
Cool. So you are owner or co-owner of Iron Body Studio?
I am, yes. Iron Body Studios. I co-own it with my boyfriend Eric Gann, and I met him about a year before I got my RKC certification, and he and I went together to get our RKC certification together. And when we got back from that, that's when at the time I was working for a commercial gym, so I started to when I left my office job, my 5-year plan was to have my own gym. So that was somewhere on the menu. And when I got back from my RKC cert, that was when I really wanted to start to take some steps to opening my own facility. So when I got back, that was something that he and I did together. And at the time, he was working for Boston University as a senior athletic trainer. He is an athletic trainer. So I was the one who left the gym and did it full time. And then Eric Gann I don't know if I said his name before, but Eric was involved part time. So, he devoted just whatever time he could in terms of training a client here and there and covering 1 to 2 classes a week. So, and then from there, he left his job in 2012 to run the gym full time with me.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the average Joe walks into your gym, what can he expect?
It is a very personalized family, tight-knit atmosphere. So it's a very small training studio. We actually, our first facility that we had, we were in this really large facility. It was 4,000 square feet, but the training area itself was only 1,200. So we had all this unused space that we were paying for, but but you would come into this massive facility. So we just moved from there in July of this year because it was just, as far as overhead, it was like we shouldn't have space that we're paying for but we're not using. So it was more of a business decision, like we need to do this because this makes sense financially for our business. And so now we're in a training space that is 500. The training space itself is only 560 square feet, but it works for our business. It's we call our classes team training. So our team training is really small. We cap it at 8 people. We have small group training that we cap at 4 people. And it's everyone knows everyone, and everyone is really friendly and supportive. And it's all about celebrating each other's accomplishments and strength goals and strength accomplishments and just supporting each other even outside of the gym too. So I have some clients that have been training with me since I was at the commercial gym. So they've been with me for like 5-6 years now. And I know that they all have friendships outside of the gym and they see each other outside of the gym, which is really cool. And most of them were brought together via like coming to train with me in a group kettlebell class. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I can imagine it sounds like you try to recreate a little bit of that small group and camaraderie experience with your workshops. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what exactly those entail.
Yeah, so I started my strength workshop, which is called I'm Not Afraid to Lift. I started that a year ago, a little over a year ago. It was in September of 2014. And I started it because I had earlier in the year, I'd given a talk over at a Crunch Fitness in New York City, and I was just talking about my journey through strength training and I went through all these, in my journey of fitness. I went through ballet and kung fu, and in there I even there were times in my life where I was on the Stairmaster, I was doing Nautilus, I remember I was in college, I joined Bally's Total Fitness, and I used to do like 2 aerobics classes a day. I was like all into aerobics, doing step aerobics. I had tried like urban rebounding. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. It's like a aerobics class using trampolines. I've done everything. And through that, like I was never afraid to lift weights. Like even though my dance background, it took a toll on me in terms of my body image and some behavioral issues that I had to overcome when it came to food and my body image. But even with that, I was never afraid to lift weights. Like I was never afraid of strength training. I was never afraid of just seeing how strong I was ever, no matter what I was doing. And it just got me thinking about like, where did this come from that generally women are afraid to lift. They're either, and even some men are too, they're afraid to lift either because they're afraid they're going to get hurt, or they're afraid because they're not going to like what happens to their body after they start doing it. And really the reality is strength training is so important, and my strength training is part of the fountain of youth. It's going to help to add longevity to your life. It's going to help you to move better longer. And be stronger longer. So that's where I wrote a blog about this, and then from there, that's where the workshop came out of it. And some of it was related to training for the Iron Maiden Challenge as well. Just the experience that I had personally training for the Iron Maiden Challenge, how it impacted me, and how amazing it was to become that strong. And so with the workshop, yes, it's about really bringing people together, helping to empower each other through strength. And really, most of the women come in, and I'll debunk the bulking myth, but they already are bought into that. So it's more about just talking about the problem and then just reiterating solutions so that when they walk out of there, they're enforcing solutions to this problem of women. I shouldn't say just women because it is men too, but men and women being afraid to lift for whatever reason it is. And within the workshop, and I think that my most recent workshop in Virginia, I had a workshop at Beyond Strength Performance in Northern Virginia at the beginning of October, and that group just truly represented what this workshop is about. Even before I started presenting that morning, they were just already talking and bonding and just and getting to know each other. And the whole weekend, it just had this. They had this amazing energy where they were so supportive of each other and so encouraging of each other and incredibly positive, and people were joking around and having fun at the same time. And as a result, a lot of them have carried on to stay in touch beyond that workshop. And I think like they will carry forward even like in future months and stay in touch. And I even have, I have people who from a year ago who attended my lift workshop in Boston. I had one woman reach out to me just last week, and she said, I will be, she attended the lift workshop in Boston last year, and she said, I'll be with all of you there in spirit. And she said, what your workshop taught me so much, just about programming and about lifts, but it also just taught me that, as a woman who lifts and as a woman who is passionate about lifting, part of my mission is almost to, actually I have to read you this. She said, part of my mission, your workshop taught me to seek out, encourage, foster, and disciple with other women athletes. She said, a year ago, I trained alone. Now I train with a woman partner. I go more out of my way to mentor female nurses, she's a nurse, medical students and residents, and to empower women who have all sorts of bodies and all types of goals. And then she said, honestly, I think I'm not afraid to lift helped me to more clearly see the palpable value in putting that energy out there. And I loved getting this email from her. Like a year ago, she attended my workshop, and she's sending this to me now. And then it's just like, this is where I am now. And that's exactly what it's about. It's about just like putting that energy out there. And, there's always going to be in fitness, there's always going to be these methods of fitness that we don't necessarily agree with, and we can't do anything about them. They're always going to exist. There's always going to be those, the little pink dumbbells are always going to be out there, or those fitness methods that are specific to, if you're a woman, this is what you need to be doing. And we can't do anything about them. They're always going to be there. But what we can do is speak about and put the energy out there for what we are passionate about, which is strength training, and spread the message of strength. And that's basically what she was saying to me. And that's definitely what my workshop is about. And it's about hitting PRs and programming and learning lifts and all that. But it's also about just more about like spreading the message of strength. So,
yeah, amazing. And that is one of the benefits that a lot of people don't realize or are surprised to get when they oftentimes begin the practice of serious strength training as a carryover that happens in your personal life and in relationships and how you view yourself and the world around you. And certainly you have written extensively about your training and specifically your training for the Iron Maiden Challenge. But I'm curious, what type of mindset or mental changes have you had to cultivate either specifically for that particular feat of strength and in general in your training?
Well, training for the Iron Maiden Challenge, I learned how to really overcome challenges, mental challenges, to the point that, the three lifts, the pull-up and the pistol, they came pretty easily to me, but the press was a huge struggle for me. And that was something that it took me 3 years to train for the Iron Maiden Challenge. And through that time, I had many moments that I didn't think that I was capable of pressing that much weight overhead. I definitely had my moments where I just like, no, I'm too small. I guess I don't think I can do this because I struggled with it so much. And I even attempted the Iron Maiden challenge in, I think it was October 2013 for the first time, and I missed the press, and it was horrible. It was just this complete disaster. This twisted, concocted thing with my back. It was so bad. And I had to come back and I had to learn how to press again, essentially. I had to like bring it down to a 12 kilogram bell, bring it down to half kneeling and work through ladders and just really learn the press technique. Like forget about strength. Like get the weight of the bell out of my head. Stop thinking about that. Stop trying to get that big bell overhead and just start really focusing on the skill. And that was really hard. That was the hardest part of my training was even before that attempt, just having those days where I would have these days that I was pressing and I would just feel so defeated. I would go in and I would just fail at pressing here and there, and I would walk away from that training session just feeling like such crap about myself and just feeling like I was a failure and that I couldn't do it, and having to shake that off and just keep at it and just keep trying and push through that failure to just like overcome that, make what was my weakness my strength. I had to fight for that. And then coming back from failing miserably in front of like all these people at a Strong First Level 2 certification and like a huge crowd of people, and not letting that tear me apart. And like not even the weekend that I did it, like not letting it tear me apart that weekend, like somehow having the courage and the confidence to just be like, it's all right. Like this was a stepping stone to what will eventually be my success with this challenge. And I'm not going to let it bring me down and tear me apart, and walk away from that and think about, okay, so now what do I need to do better to make this happen? Because, I know I can do this. And one of the people who kind of pushed me a little bit further after I got back from that first attempt was Charlie Weingroth. And he came to Iron Body Studios. He filmed his Training Equals Rehab DVD, and we were talking about it. And he was actually at that Strong First Level 2 certification that I had first attempted it at. And so he saw my attempt, and we talked about it. And he said, Artemis, he said, you're strong enough. You're just doing it wrong. And he was right. It wasn't about the strength. Like I have the strength for the pull-up. I have the strength for the pistol. I have this upper body strength, but I just didn't have the skill of the press down. And I knew that, but it kind of took him as a mentor and coach to just like say that to my face, just like that, for me to like believe that I am strong enough, that I was strong enough, but I just need to take a step back and work on the skill. And that's what I did. And then I ended up really learning how to press, like really learning how to be great at pressing, really learning in depth the skill of pressing, and really and truly just learning it from the inside out that it really is a skill. Like strength is a skill in general, but pressing is like, yes, it is such a skill. And then, I overcame that and I got good at it. And then I was able to pass the Iron Maiden challenge, and it was cool because the day that I completed the Iron Maiden challenge in July 2014, I started out with the press first, and just because I wanted to get it done. And I wanted to press on my right side because sometimes I would have a lean on my left. And I didn't want to get into a situation where I was pressing on the left and then I would have this horrible lean and the press wouldn't count. So I wanted to press right. So I went to go and press the bell right out of the gate on the right side, and it wasn't going where I wanted it to go. And I remembered from my previous attempt how much energy I had expended pushing through a bad press. And so I stopped the press. I was just like, screw it. And I just like put the bell down. I was like, I'm not going to push through that. I'm not going to expend my energy through a bad press. And there were just as many people at that cert in July of 2014 that I actually completed the Iron Maiden challenge as there were back in October 2013. And in fact, we were at 5 Points Academy in New York City, so we were in a much smaller space. I had all these people like right on top of me. But what was so cool to me was that I had been training so long for this challenge, and that I felt so confident somewhere inside of myself about these lifts, that crowd being right on top of me and choosing not to go forward with that first attempt, it didn't shake me up. And I remember back in October 2013 when I went to go press the bell, and the first time I couldn't get it up, the crowd, all I could think about was the crowd. Like, they were just like, it was just freaking me out. Like, I couldn't get my mind off the crowd. And so when I went to go back for my second attempt, that first, I had to like turn my back to the crowd. But when I actually completed the Iron Maiden Challenge in July 2014, I didn't need to do that. Like, I was able to tune them out. I was able to just like be in my zone. Like, they didn't stress me out. And John Ingham was the master instructor there. And so I moved on to my pull-up. I did my pull-up, and then I did my pistol, and then I came back to the press. And when I went to go press again, I pressed on the left side, and it shot right up, like no problem. And it was so funny because everyone was just like, what was that? Like, were you screwing with us? Like, you went to go press right, and then you press left. But for me, what was just like so cool was just how far I had come training for this challenge in terms of mindset. In terms of like, I knew where my brain was when I was attempting that press for the first time in 2013, and in 2014, even though I didn't get that press on the first attempt, it didn't screw with my brain the way it did in 2013. And it was just so cool. Like, it's just, so I definitely achieved that through training through this challenge, and just working through some challenges in my training before getting to the actual day. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it's the muscle between your ears that can make all the difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because it doesn't matter that week before you have a competition or a challenge like that, your training is done. Like, there's nothing more that you can do in your training that week that's going to help you the day of. All you can do for yourself that week is get some good sleep, make sure you're hydrated, and that you stay on track of your meals, right? That you don't go a day where you're like skipping meals or anything like that. You just want to stay on track of your nutrition. There's nothing that you can actually do in your training to make anything better at that point. There really isn't. It's all about that week before is really about just like mental focus, getting your mind right, like being able to really get into the zone that day of, and just making sure you're well rested and well hydrated and well fed. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what does your training look like these days?
So lately, I have been getting into barbell lifting, which has been super cool. It's been, it was really cool after I finished the Iron Maiden Challenge. I said to Eric, because I had just been training for that thing for so long, and even though like I learned so much from it and I got so strong from it, I was just so happy to put it behind me. I was like, I don't have to train for the Iron Maiden Challenge anymore. Like, I am done. Like, I can check that off my list. I can move on to other stuff. I can just have like, and it was fun training for it, but like, I can really have fun. Like, I don't have this pressure of this challenge. So just this summer, I went to a seminar, Optimizing the Big Three, and it was taught by a colleague of mine who I've known for 6 years, Greg Robbins. He's a coach out of Cressy Sports Performance. He taught it, and he co-teaches it. He's the lead presenter for it, but there's another coach out of Cressy Sports Performance, Tony Bonvecchio, and he teaches it with Greg. And I went to this workshop because I'm not training for the Iron Maiden Challenge anymore. And all I used to train for the Iron Maiden Challenge was just kettlebell and body weight movement. So I wasn't touching a barbell at the time at all. And so for me as a coach, I was at a point where I knew I needed to move on to something else, and I needed to learn something else, and I know when it comes to barbell lifting, I do not have the expertise that I have in comparison to kettlebell lifting. And so as a coach, it's something that I need to learn more about and practice more and grow more in that area. And attending that workshop in August really lit the fire for that. And it really got me pumped about barbell lifting and learning more about barbell lifting. And they have a women's powerlifting group over at Cressy Sports Performance. And so Cressy is pretty far from where I'm at. It's 25 miles. It's in Hudson, Mass. So like during rush hour, it takes me like an hour and 15 minutes. And then coming back, it's like 40, 45 minutes. The women's powerlifting group meets 3 times a week, and I go out. I've dedicated definitely Thursdays. I go Thursday nights, and then if I'm here on a Saturday, I'll go on a Saturday as well. And then on Tuesdays, I'll do the program at Iron Body Studios. And Tony Bonvecchio, he's the one who leads the group. And for me, it was important to go and actually be with the group and be with the coach and not learn this stuff on my own, not just like read a book and get a program and try and figure some stuff out myself, like in my gym with the barbell. It was, for me, it was important to like be with a coach who knows so much about barbell lifting. I mean, Tony is just, he's so experienced in barbell lifting and powerlifting. And Greg is there too. He's not teaching the group, but just like being around these people who know so much about it, just as I know about kettlebell training, and having them teach me. And so I thought that was really, really important. And I learn best when I'm taught that way, and I'm actually getting my hands on and just like practicing it every day and having this structured practice. So that's what I've been into lately, and I've really been loving it. And I started attending this group the last week of September, and I remember I felt like a fish out of water. Oh my God, like the first couple of weeks, I totally felt like a fish out of water, maybe like the first 3 weeks. So I would say just in the last like 2 weeks or so, have I really started to feel like comfortable with when I'm training myself on Tuesdays at Iron Body Studios, really comfortable with getting into my own setup for bench and getting into my own setup for all the lifts, deadlift, back squat. And whereas like in the beginning, like the first couple of weeks when I was training on my own at Iron Body Studios, I just felt so awkward. Like I was like, I hope no one's watching right now because I feel so awkward. But I think you just have to go through that and just figure it out yourself. And it's also just really cool to train with a group of women that are just pumped about lifting heavy weights. Like, we definitely all bond over that. So that's really cool. And I love, as a coach, I love having a coach. Like I coach people all the time. Like it's so great to have someone else just tell me like, what do I need to work on? Like, tell me, I want that. So that's been cool.
Awesome. Well, Artemis, thank you very much for sharing. Certainly don't want to keep you too much longer, but I guess, is there anything else in particular that you wanted to make sure that we touch on before we wrap up?
I would say, I think it's important, sometimes when it comes to my workshop, I'm not afraid to lift. Some people think that maybe it's for people who are advanced lifters, and it's for all levels. So it's important to communicate to people that coming in, like I teach the lifts from the ground up. So like, for example, like I teach the kettlebell swing, I teach the deadlift, we learn the hip hinge first, right? So we teach everything from the ground up, and it's for all levels. And I've had people come in as beginners and walk away just really feeling inspired about lifting and feeling like they've learned a lot. So no matter what level they are. And then just like really grateful for the bonds that they and the new friends that they make at the workshop. So please don't be intimidated by that workshop. This is about breaking that intimidation of lifting and coming in and training in a comfortable atmosphere. So
absolutely, and I can attest. I've had one of my clients go to actually specifically the workshop that you had mentioned up in DC. And I certainly hope you will be doing another one up there soon. I might have to make a trip up myself.
Cool. That would be awesome. I would really like that a lot. It'd be great to meet you in person.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up here, speaking, of course, we've talked about some of the particular issues that surround females and weightlifting, or just the general stigma and the intimidation that might come along with the particular style of training that we've come to specialize in. What advice might you have to some, specifically maybe a young lady who is interested in pursuing or at least dabbling in this idea of strength training and has no real experience and is a little apprehensive? What advice or words of encouragement might you have for her?
I think it's important to give it a try, to give it a shot. I think sometimes where people fall short is they don't even give it time to let to have some positive things happen that motivate you to want to continue on. So I think step one is to come in, give it a try, give it like 6 weeks. And because, the first couple weeks, just like me with barbell lifting, like I felt like a fish out of water. So, those first few weeks, you're going to feel a little awkward. You're going to be really, really sore. It's going to be a little scary. But just giving it the time that it needs so that you can come in and have some positive experiences and build that self-efficacy that is going to motivate you to want to continue on. And if you give it that time, and once you start hitting some PRs and you start to really have some great things happen in the training room, it's very rewarding. So give it some time for those rewards to happen. And I do think when it comes to lifting, I think kettlebell training is a good way to start. I think if you look at a kettlebell deadlift versus a barbell deadlift, it's a lot less intimidating. So walking up to a kettlebell and learning how to deadlift is a lot less intimidating than walking up to a barbell and doing that. So I think also just starting the right way and with the right tools, and finding the right atmosphere. So it's a good thing is that small training gyms are becoming more and more popular. Small training gyms with these encouraging, positive atmosphere. So you're finding that training gym that really fits you, and going to a training gym, number one, and finding that gym that really like fits you and that you feel comfortable in, and that every time you walk in the door, you're excited to be there. And even though maybe you're a little bit nervous, it's encouraging at the same time.
Well said. All right. Well, that is Artemis of Iron Body Studios and the I Am Not Afraid to Lift workshops. Thank you again very much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you very much for having me, Zach.
You got it. My pleasure. We'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good.